We're welcome back to the Richmond Lowdown. Hey, Don.
Hey, Doris. Well, the world has come to an end once again.
Wow.
Yes, and just to bring you up to date, last week, Donald Trump was asked in his very person what he thought of Brexit. And he said it was good. I had ham and eggs and a couple of waffles this
No,
morning.
he didn't.
Yeah. And then they said, well, Donald, we're talking about what's going on with the UK. Wonderful things are going on with the UK. He had absolutely no idea of what Brexit was, what it meant, what was going to happen. But then he got in his handy-dandy little plane of his and flew over to Scotland for his campaign to make sure that his golf courses were on the air every night so that people could come over. And while he was there, most of the soccer hooligans in Britain decided that they're sick and tired of having all these people coming over their borders. And rather than build a wall, they were just going to use the natural moat that they have around the island and do away with the EU idea that you don't need passports to cross over borders if you belong. And this way they can build their own wall and not have all these people in anymore. And it was a pretty good idea to do that, everybody thought, until they did it.
Yeah.
The market dropped 800 points over 800 points in 2 days. 610 points on on Friday the Dow went down, and 200 and some yesterday. And all of a sudden, they've got this thing called buyer's remorse. And when they finally caught up with Donald, after the world was collapsing on the world markets and the pound had lost 40% of its value, and he said, well, the nice thing about that is that there'll be more tourists coming to my golf course.
Just when I think he can't get stupider, he does.
But it's not. And Donald is what Donald is.
It's all about Donald.
He's a promoter of Donald.
Yeah, he's a brand.
So, and so here's the thing. When he is telling you that we ought to build walls around, through Mexico, and that what we ought to do with the Chinese is sort of renegotiate our debt and say, we owe you what, $30 trillion? We'll just pay you 10 cents on the dollar for that. And inasmuch as the dollar is pretty much considered the U.S. currency, you can kiss that goodbye. You can throw the world into a worldwide recession followed by a depression. And then, of course, if that isn't bad enough, he's going to put up 35% tariffs on everything brought into the country.
That will definitely tank everything.
That will make Brexit look like a stroll in the park.
But you don't have to worry, Don, because once he's president,
It'll be great.
it'll be great. It'll be the bestest of the mostest.
Yeah.
But, and you remember that scandal a few years ago that somebody was sort of charging people for sleeping in the Lincoln bedroom? They were getting gifts. Can't you see the White House is the newest Trump Tower?
Oh, it's going to have the name Trump on the front of it. It won't be the White House.
It'll be the Trump
House.
The Trump House.
And for the highest bidder, you'll be able to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom.
Yeah.
And they're going to rent it out for bar mitzvahs and weddings.
Wow. And for a surcharge, you can actually play with the red phone.
With the nuclear button.
Yeah.
Take your picture as though you just launched it until they realize that you actually did just launch it. And then we won't have to worry about his economic policies anymore. No, I think that's fair. We'll make it if it is truly the America's house. And I think what Donald will do, though, is somehow the amount of revenue that will be, brought in by that will go into his personal Donald Trump campaign. Because, being president, you can do stuff like that.
It's strange that you say that.
And it is his name that's going to be on the house.
Yeah, I understand that. I saw an article that talked about how a whole lot of his campaign contributions that he has collected, that.
You mean the stuff that he billed the Republican? the RNC for?
Yeah, I mean.
He had run up $55 million, and then he charged back $45 million because all of the things that he held the press conferences were in Mar-a-Lago or some Trump Tower thing.
And hit one of his resorts, yeah.
And after all, you don't get that space for free.
Right.
At least when you're with Donald.
There's been some speculation that, and you and I have talked about this, that, he ran for president once before, and it kind of tanked early. And, it's just the mood of the country that he's gotten as far as he has. But that could actually put him in the White House. But I still say he's surprised he's gotten this far.
Oh, absolutely.
But, of course, he thinks he's really entitled to it. The American people have finally woken up to his true merit.
I agree. I think that seeing him the night that he wrapped up the nomination and standing there with that wonder look in his eye as though, what the hell just happened? He's looking at giving up his Rolls Royce. He's looking at giving up his penthouse in Midtown and moving into a White House in the ghetto of Washington, D.C. His private plane isn't going to be quite what his private plane is because it's, everything is done in gold in his plane. And I'm sure that it's not being done in gold. Maybe he'll just rename Trump 1 Air Force One. But he'll keep the name Trump on it.
Well, I'm sure that Air Force One, whichever one of the Air Force Ones they're using, does not have the amenities that the Trump plane has.
And it's not the best.
It's not the best.
Trump has the bestest plane ever built.
And the bestest wife
and pilot.
Yeah, and a daughter that if she wasn't his daughter, he'd want to have sex with.
So here's the long and the short of this, kiddies. When Trump wants to renegotiate our debt and just pay 10 cents on the dollar to the Chinese, when he wants to put a 35% surcharge in the form of a tariff on everything coming into our country, and he's going to build a wall to keep out the undesirables, just like they just did in England. Anything that you saw that happened in England over the weekend, and the fact that it's going to take 10 years at best to get them back, you can just times that by 100.
Yeah, that was a cartoon stick of dynamite.
Exactly.
But we would be the big one.
Yeah. And so when you're pushing that button for Donald to solve all of your economic problems, you might want to think back to the two old farts that are telling you, don't do it. Don't do it. It's the nuclear button.
Yeah, I think that what Donald has shown is it can't be business as usual. People are angry. People are worried. People do not like politicians or the way things are being run. And that there is still, and has always been, a really ugly core of racism in this country. And sexual, gender issue fears, and blah, blah, blah.
I think we said it before. When you lose hope, and we have lost hope, there's nothing left to believe in this country. Your government doesn't work. Our infrastructure is falling apart. And the good news is there's no good news. It just seems to be getting worse. And when you have nobody to turn to, eventually that all turns to anger.
And you want to blame somebody.
Exactly. And the reality of it is their fault.
But it's who they are. And, I don't think we always look in the right place.
Certainly you have to start with Congress, who just can't seem... it's a no-brainer, kids, that you don't go out hunting for a herd of deer. You don't need a clip with 100 shots in it. But somehow that has become, the good sense of the NRA that we all deserve to have one of those. And I'm wondering where that arms race is going to end. Do we all get our own personal tank and, get a set of drones that we can play with? And where does that all stop? The absurdity is that if Congress can't vote on something that is going to not allow some idiot who has already been sort of designated as a terrorist to get a gun at a gun show, that seems pretty obvious. And no.
Or somebody who's actually certified mentally ill.
Yeah. Or that there should be registration of guns at gun shows. That's all no-brainers. And here's the thing that's sad about it. It's the fact that these idiot Republicans won't vote on it because they're Republicans.
And because they've decided that it's their way.
Or the highway.
Exactly.
And the Democrats, don't get me wrong, aren't any better. But if you want some gun control, here's the deal. On the ballot where it has next to the name R, you might want to not vote for that. And I'm not trying to say that the Democrats are any better. So here's the best way. If it's an incumbent, don't vote for him.
Well, again, we've talked about holding our noses and voting for the lesser of the two evils, and neither one of us are Hillary fans. I think she is kind of tainted.
That's like saying a mud puddle might be slightly dirty.
Oh, well, yeah, I know.
Come on.
I was trying to be genteel.
This is, it's sad that this country has wound its way to these are the choices that we have. And we talked about it last week. It's all your fault, folks. If you don't want any better, and if you're not willing to go out and work for something better, then you deserve what you get.
I've told you before, I ride the Richmond buses, and it is an education. It's always an education in all sorts of different things. And, last year before the interim election, the one that gave us our current mayor in Richmond, I was listening to the people talk. And once again, I was amazed at how few of them had ever voted. And then when you heard what the ones who did vote voted for, you're almost glad they're not voting.
And those are the very people that are bitching the loudest.
Yeah.
Things have got to change. They got to change. Well, listen, there's a vote coming up Tuesday. Tuesday? Well, there's a game on Tuesday. The Cubs are on that. I don't want to miss that. And I've got that meeting with my friend Bob. We meet every day for breakfast. I can't miss that. And there's a special on Whoppers. So that afternoon we got to get over to get ourselves a couple. Every excuse in the world except get off your fat butt and actually do something and vote. And demand that they give you some representation that's at least semi-literate.
As you know, I'm a committee person, and for the first time ever, the local Democratic Party a few years ago just went around and said, hey, we want to have a full ticket. We want all the precincts represented. So, they drafted a whole bunch of people to be on the ballot. Of course, now, to be a precinct captain, you're not running against anybody. You're not running against the other party. You're just getting on the ballot and being voted. So they had more than enough people to fill all the committee places. So I really think I got elected because there were 2 or 3 people that the average voter knew, and then they just went down and voted for first letters of the alphabet.
Ashbrook. No, there you go.
Or eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Mm-hmm. We'll take the first 5.
We used to have the League of Women Voters who actually tried to inform people about what people stood for. That's now defunct in Richmond and maybe most places. And there really is very few places you can go to find out. And if you do find out, what you find out once again is they're all bad.
So I know that you're probably sick and tired of us bitching about all this stuff. So I thought today we would lighten it up with a little lighter story that comes to us out of California. It was reported that last night in Oceanside, California, the police had given chase to a car that was pretty much speeding and running lights and stuff. And it took almost a mile for this person to finally actually stop the car so that the police could ascertain.
They had their sirens and their lights
Their
flashing.
sirens were going and the lights were flashing and everything was just fine. And so imagine the surprise when the police walked up and found an actual body sticking through the front windshield of the car. And on the trunk of the car was one of the legs of the body that had just somehow mystically crashed through the front of the car. And in the car was a nice young lady by the name of Stacy Sanchez. And it was reported that she had been out partying all night.
No kidding.
And several things crossed through my sicko mind. Number one, if you're the cop, what do you say when you come up to the car? Excuse me. May I see your license and your registration, please?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Stacy, did you happen to notice that there is a body shoved through the windshield of your car?
The one leg was actually severed.
Yeah, and on the trunk.
And on the trunk.
On the trunk. And
were there other body parts littered as debris?
No, just the torso and everything else was right through the right side,
okay.
Wedged into the passenger seat with a big hole in the windshield. Now, the other thing that occurred to me that if you're Stacy, I've been drunk in my life.
No.
God knows. I have driven drunk in my life. But the drunkest I ever was, and the drunkest when I drove I ever was, I would have noticed a body flying through the windshield of my car.
Yeah.
That has a tendency to just sober you up quick.
Well, the shower of glass.
Yeah, exactly.
The noise.
And the blood and
the blood spatter.
Guts and all the stuff that happens with that. And so, I'm wondering what her defense was. Well, the guy was bothering me all night, trying to hit on me, and so I just sped away from the bar, and he ran ahead of me and jumped into a tree, and then jumped through my front windshield.
He jumped from a tree?
Well, that sounds logical to me, Or he vaulted himself through the windshield, and I was sitting still.
Who'd she hit? The Flash? Superman? I don't get this.
And I'm just wondering what her defense is going to be.
I wonder what illustrious member of the American bar is going to represent her.
Somebody's going to take this gratis to be into the courtroom on this one. So you say, Stacy, you were riding along, and all of a sudden you noticed a body next to you. And they had a picture of this car, and the front of the hood was all bashed in on the right side where this guy had obviously hit. But the other thing that had to, and you shouldn't be laughing about stuff like this.
I'm really, really sorry about the guy who died.
But I mean, it took her almost a mile to react to the police trying to pull her over.
Was she even aware of the body?
Well, it didn't say. It left that to your imagination, but I can't imagine what roll call is going to be like today at the Oceanside Police Department. When Sergeant Burns gets up and says, "Is anything exciting happened last night or out of the ordinary?" Well, there was this babe in a car with a body through the windshield. And nobody would believe you if you told them stuff like this.
No.
So, don't think that we're always looking for the dark side of what goes on in the world.
We're very positive people. I read Norman Vincent Peale, all 3 pages I could stomach.
But in a morbid way, it is kind of funny, isn't it?
We're ghouls.
I can't imagine getting in front of St. Peter and them saying, "So, how did you die?" Well, I was crossing the street on my way to Walmart, and the next thing I know, I was in a 2010 Chevy.
That poor man's in Valhalla, heaven, whatever. He's right there right now because
Maybe it was the fact that she needs to sharpen up her share a ride skills. And she needs to actually slow down to pick up people to share a ride with. Maybe that was it.
It probably is the fact that she should be suing the bar or the party, host who put her in the way of having too much alcohol or drugs or both.
Let me tell you a true story. As true a story as I can tell.
Ooh.
My aunt...
Okay, people.
My aunt and uncle owned a bar called the Paddock. And it was in Wheaton, Illinois. Well, it wasn't in Wheaton because Wheaton's dry. It was actually in Carroll Stream. It was actually unincorporated. But anyway, they owned this bar for a long time. And one night, a guy came into the bar, and he was just shit-faced. And my uncle, who was also shit-faced, knew enough to say, "What's that?"
It's you. You're messing with the chords.
No, I'm not doing the thing. So he says, "I'm not going to serve you." And the guy gets all bent out of shape and whatnot. His car peels out of the driveway right into the to the path of an oncoming car that just broadsided this guy. And the car that he was in actually caught on fire, and he was thrown to the passenger side of the car. And my uncle ran out and actually had to break the glass of the passenger side with his arm. And I forget how many stitches he had to get in his arm, and dragged this guy out.
So he saved him.
Yeah. And then the guy turned around and sued him on dram shot. Now, dram shot is that you can actually sue a bar for over serving you.
But your uncle had refused to serve him.
And that meant that my uncle had to get an attorney and go to court and actually defend himself and get people to show up in court to testify that this moron had not had a drink in his bar. But they were going to pull his license. They were going to do all kinds of stuff. Kids, you know what we need? America needs a reset button. We really do. Because everything and every day and every time that somebody passes a law to make something like abortion legal, there's people out there who are going to try to make it not legal. And the dimwits in Texas, I say we let Texas go. Let them go. Let them, they can be their own country.
Could we keep Austin?
No. Austin's the worst. We're going to keep none of Texas. Let them have their state. We've already pumped the oil out of the state, so there's none of that left. So we don't need them for that. And these people in Texas...
Well, they'd be the only ones then that would really have to build a wall. Maybe we could build a wall around Texas.
You think if we called Trump and told him that, maybe we could get that put through?
Yeah, we could let Texas go.
But we got to tell him it was his idea. Listen, all you people that are listening, if there is anybody, just pray to God. Tell him you didn't hear it here. So when it's Donald's idea, be surprised.
Be surprised.
Yeah.
And compliment him.
Oh, wow.
Praise.
What a great idea.
Praise Donald. Praise Donald.
The people in Texas have decided that they were going to take on the abortion thing and just made it impossible for abortion clinics to stay open, and then smugly went to the Supreme Court and thought they were going to defend their case to the Supreme Court. And at best, it was going to be a 4-4 decision because we lost one of our all-time wonderful judges to poor health. Well, actually, he died, so that's about as poor health as you can get.
That's poor health.
But anyway, so what happens is that the Supreme Court rules 5-3. And even if we had had a good Republican to vote against it, it would have been 5-4.
Yeah.
So now they have to undo all of the bullshit that they're trying to put through Planned Parenthood and making it difficult for people to get. And
they won't let go of that. You know they're not going to let go of that.
Of course not. And here's the thing. The economy that we have at best is fragile. At best. The fact that the poor get poorer and the rich get fewer and richer, the fact that corporations have a better tax rate than you do, the fact that you're going to get screwed out of as much of your money as they possibly can, while the rich don't pay any taxes or pay less taxes than they should. All of this still goes on in this country because none of you will do anything about it.
You know, issues are very complicated, and it seems to me that we pick out. It's like, government is too big. Let's do away with government. That's what the libertarians think. All governments are bad. Let's do away with governments.
Well, I think that the real issue here is that what you're being told the issues
aren't the issues.
Never were the issues.
Never were the issues.
Let's get rid of gay people. Because the gays are going to come into your neighborhood, and they come in at night, you know, in those dark outfits and whatnot.
They're going to spread their gayness.
And your kids are going to wake up and go, holy man, I got to put on some show tunes. I mean, it's just it's ludicrous that this is actually being discussed, but it's always the Republicans that have these whack-a-mole ideas of telling you what's important in this country. Gays, it's abortion.
Those are what I call the red herring hot button issues.
And for God's sakes, we need a law so that people can say Merry Christmas.
You know, again, there are people who, I heard this, I heard this religious person and of the Christian persuasion who was saying, you know, people of faith have rights too, but their rights always seem to involve telling somebody else what they can do and not do.
And it's not people of faith, it's people of faith who are in my immediate congregation.
Right.
Because we're the ones that have the truth. Even other people of the same denomination aren't in this congregation.
Yeah. You know, the Catholic Church knew. Now, I'm not praising the Catholic Church for this, but they always knew that if they ever allowed those schisms, whatever they are, I always get that word wrong.
Schisms.
I know. I actually did know.
Schisms. No, that was Chisholm. That was a good movie with John Wayne.
Oh, wow. Okay, I gotta watch
They're
that.
Chisholms.
Was it on AMC? Okay, never mind. Anyway, they always knew that if they allowed people to think for themselves, the great splintering would stop. And there were actually people saying, you know, it won't be just the Lutherans breaking away. Yeah, no. And that's what we've seen. Every single little church in America has its own particular brand of flavor of what it means to be Christian.
So if you take religion and how they keep their people in line is fear. If you take government, how you keep people in line is fear.
Yes.
So the more they keep you fearful, the better it is for them.
And always be worried when they play on your own, and we all have them, our own prejudices, and they say, all your problems can be solved if we just handle, and then they point the finger.
Yeah, if we got rid of the gays, obviously everything would go away. Well,
or the
Mexicans have to go too, and the Muslims, you got to get rid of them.
And you know women can't be trusted.
No, that takes care of them, and of course Trump doesn't like blacks, so we got to get rid of them too, and that just
and the ugly people
gone,
heavy people
gone,
sick people
gone, crazy people gone, old people gone.
Yeah, old, yeah.
So, you know, we're left with the white people who very nicely came over to greet the American Indians when we first got here, and then took away their land from them. And it hasn't stopped since then.
Yeah, pretty much.
But you know what we did, which was real nice, is we came to them after we took it away and we said, well, we have this piece of paper here that it is now legal, that we actually own your land.
Yeah.
And it's been signed.
Right.
Which, you know, if you've got something signed, well.
If a lawyer drew it up.
Well, of course.
You know, as you know, I'll bore you once again. I've been doing genealogy, and I've always been told I have a lot of Indian ancestors. So here's this one thing that I just want to point out to people. Under President Andrew Jackson, they decided that there could be no Indians, basically east of the Mississippi.
As God wanted it.
Yeah, they were all going to go out, you know, Oklahoma and some other areas. And, you know, some of my ancestors had to hide. And if obviously somebody in the community knew that they were Indian. Maybe they were married to Europeans, or maybe they were not. I found one whole family that somehow or other managed to hide out in the hills. And
well, if you were Oriental in California during World War II, all the chop suey places went out of business. They just rounded all those people up and threw them into an internment camp, as God wanted us to.
Well, and especially Japanese Americans.
Of course, as God wanted us to do, because they were the bad people. And I guess if they were the bad people, why did we ever let them out?
Well, and
should have just kept them there.
Right. Right.
And just, we didn't know enough to build the ovens, I guess.
Well, and we always have that knee-jerk response. Remember when they wanted to rename French fries? What was it? Freedom fries? Oh, I'll take a big order of freedom fries.
Could you get some freedom fries?
Are we hearing from, who is that? Who is that guy?
Devon.
Devin?
Devon.
Sometimes I
Devon speaks to us a lot of times about baby Jesus because he happens to know personally the baby Jesus because he accepted baby Jesus into his life.
he was saved.
Well, the school's still out, but he did accept baby Jesus into his life.
He has a personal relationship.
Personal.
Hmm.
Maybe guys with funny voices ought to be thrown out of this country, too.
I think you and I would get thrown out.
So,
And I almost got thrown out of the Democratic Party. They tried.
Well, that would be a move up for you. This is a sad state of affairs that we have in America. We're all pissed off. We're all isolated. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to come together as people. I mean, we all have things in common. We all breathe. We all need water to survive. We all need food. We want our kids to have a pretty decent life.
We're all the same biological species.
Yeah, and the reality of it is we all came out of Africa originally. So
Yeah.
there you go, white Santa. Maybe we should get a black Santa.
I think Jesus is black.
Oh, I hope so. I really do. Just for all the old white bigots that I know in my life, that's going to be it. I'd rather go to hell.
Now, in case you think we're anti-God or anti-spiritual, we're not. Don really is. He used to say he was, and I will testify under oath. Don really is one of the most spiritual human beings I know.
Wow, that's saying something, and I wouldn't admit that to many people. But it is what it is.
I think that calls for a full moment of silence.
The universe didn't just all of a sudden. Anybody that tells you that the Big Bang happened, it had to happen in something, and something had to make the Big Bang happen.
There had to be something before the Big Bang.
Of course. And, I always was in school, and I asked questions like, if the universe is expanding, what's it expanding in? Because something has to make room for it expanding.
Well,
because if it didn't, it would just sort of fall apart at the edges.
But now again, now we're getting way too metaphysical, and we don't have
Jesus Christ, if people won't vote, they sure as hell don't want to listen to this.
And Neil, what is his name?
deGrasse.
Neil, yes. I mean, my gosh, is he wonderful? I think I could listen to him forever. But anyway, we're now really need to wrap it up for the day.
So on that happy note of finding a body in your front seat and wondering how it got there, to Donald Trump being...
Are you sure there were no parts of him besides that leg that kind of got...
No,
left
just a
behind?
leg on the trunk. That was
Really?
it.
Okay.
Sort of the rest of them was sort of stuffed into the passenger seat.
I'm
Wonder
going to
if he
be
had a
pondering
seatbelt.
that all day.
And she was trying to put a seatbelt on, I guess.
And honestly, sincerely, condolences to the family, because that is a personal tragedy. And it's going to come out, and people are going to start talking about who this poor victim is. And, we're all going to feel bad. So we're not making fun of that. But
So it's too soon?
what?
It's too soon?
I don't know. Is it time for lunch yet?
Is it too soon for it to be considered funny?
No, I think that the funny moment has to precede then feeling genuinely sad.
But it's still funny.
It is funny.
See you next week, kids.
Bye.